The air in Grandma's house was heavy, not with grief, but with a stale silence that followed the funeral procession. Michael was upstairs, probably staring at old photo albums, lost in a sea of nostalgia. I, however, was in the study, my fingers tracing the mahogany grain of her old desk. My mind wasn't on memories. It was on the will. I knew she had one. Grandma wasn't the type to leave things to chance. The house, this small piece of paradise nestled on the outskirts of Boston, was everything. It was the only thing of real value she owned, and I couldn't bear the thought of Michael getting half of it. He had a good job, a stable life. Me? I was still paying off student loans, struggling to make a name for myself in a city that chewed people up and spit them out. I deserved this more. I started my search methodically, not in the obvious places, not in the filing cabinet or the safe. I knew Grandma. She was sentimental, but also practical. I remembered her telling me once that the most important things are hidden in plain sight. My eyes landed on the old porcelain music box on her mantel. It had a secret compartment, a childhood game we used to play. I flipped the latch, and sure enough, there it was. A crisp white envelope, sealed with a wax stamp. My name and Michael's were scrawled on the front in her shaky handwriting. My heart pounded, a frantic rhythm against my ribs. My hands trembled as I carefully slid the document out. I didn't even need to read it. I knew what it would say: to be divided equally between my beloved grandchildren, Sarah and Michael. A surge of righteous anger washed over me. Equal? After all I had done for her in those final years? The late-night visits, the grocery runs, the endless doctor's appointments. Michael was rarely around. He'd call, send flowers, but I was the one who was here. With the will in my hands, a cold clarity settled over me. This was my chance. I slid the envelope into my purse, a swift, silent movement that felt more like instinct than a conscious decision. When Michael came downstairs, his eyes red and puffy, I looked at him with what I hoped was a convincing look of sympathy. "Any luck finding anything?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. I shook my head slowly, meeting his gaze without flinching. "I looked everywhere, Michael. I don't think there is one. We'll just have to deal with the lawyers and probate. It's going to be a nightmare." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Figures," he mumbled, and just like that, the lie was born. I felt a knot of guilt tighten in my stomach, but I ignored it. This was for me. It had to be. That's the end of the first chapter. If you're enjoying the story, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part. The first few weeks passed in a blur of forced sympathy and quiet calculation. While Michael continued to mourn, I was already making calls. The house, once a source of comfort, now felt like a ticking clock. Every morning I'd wake up to the same sight of Grandma's empty armchair and feel a cold dread, not of loss, but of delay. I couldn't have this asset sitting idle. It needed to be liquidated, converted into the freedom I craved. When Michael came down one afternoon, his eyes still red, I approached him with a practiced solemnity. "We have to talk about the house, Michael," I began, my voice softer than I felt. "We can't just let it sit here. It's a huge financial burden." He looked at me, a flicker of something in his eyes that I couldn't quite decipher. "Can't we just keep it for a while? For the memories?" I knew this would be his reaction. He was always the sentimental one. "Michael, be realistic," I said, letting a hint of impatience creep into my tone. "The taxes, the upkeep, the utilities. It's going to bleed us dry. Neither of us can afford that. It's what Grandma would have wanted, for us to be smart and secure." It was a manipulative lie, and I knew it. Grandma would have wanted us to keep the house, to keep the family together. But he didn't know that. He just saw me as the pragmatic older sister, making the hard choices. He eventually agreed, his shoulders slumping in defeat. Just don't sell it to some developer, okay? Find someone who will appreciate it. I gave him a reassuring nod, my own victory hidden behind a mask of faux concern. The next day, I called a real estate agent and put the house on the market, eager to make the first move. Buyers started coming through the house, their footsteps echoing through the empty rooms like an invasion. I found myself in a state of strange detachment. While I had spent my entire childhood in these rooms, they now felt foreign, reduced to a collection of features listed on a brochure. Hardwood floors, updated kitchen, spacious backyard. Each knock on the door was a step closer to my goal, and each offer was a new wave of exhilaration. Michael, on the other hand, was tormented. He'd sit in the backyard, watching the cars pull up, his face a mix of pain and resentment. One day I found him clutching an old, yellowed photograph of the three of us on the front porch. "I remember Grandma telling me she wanted to put a swing here one day," he said, his voice quiet. "She wanted this to be a place for us, for our kids." I felt a brief, sharp pang of guilt. I pushed it away quickly. "Times change, Michael. We can't live in the past." He didn't look at me. "Did you ever think about talking to her lawyer?" he asked, a subtle shift in his tone. My heart lurched. "What for? We both know there's no will," I said too quickly. "Just to see if there was any kind of trust or something we missed," he replied, his gaze fixed on the photograph. The unease grew into a knot in my stomach. He was a simple guy, but not a fool. His persistence was a threat to my carefully constructed plan. When a decent offer came in later that week, slightly below what we could have gotten, but from a family who promised to cherish the house, I pushed the agent to accept it immediately. I needed to get this done before Michael dug any deeper. The day the wire transfer hit my account, a powerful, intoxicating sense of victory washed over me. The number on the screen was a validation of my ambition, a concrete measure of my success. The house was gone, the lie was secured, and the future was mine. Michael and I met in a coffee shop to divide the small amount of money I claimed was from the sale of furniture and other household items. I slid the check across the table to him, a casual, almost magnanimous gesture. "It's not much, I know, but it's something," I said, trying to seem generous. He looked at the number, then at me, his face unreadable. "I appreciate it, Sarah," he said, his voice flat. But there was a new, unsettling hardness in his eyes. "I just feel like something isn't right. I think I'm going to go see Grandma's lawyer anyway, just to get some closure. Do you have his contact info?" My carefully built facade almost crumbled. I felt the blood drain from my face. "What for, Michael? I already told you, there was no will. We've already gone through this," I stammered. He just shrugged, a cold, indifferent gesture. "Can't hurt to ask a few questions, can it?" he said, finishing his coffee. I left the coffee shop feeling a different kind of dread. The high of the money was quickly fading, replaced by a gnawing fear that my deceit was about to unravel. That evening, I put a down payment on a sleek, modern apartment downtown. It was a tangible symbol of my new life, a stark contrast to the old house filled with memories and, now, secrets. But as I stood on the balcony, overlooking the city lights, the feeling of triumph was gone. All I felt was a hollow, unsettling calm. The calm before the storm. That's the end of the 4th chapter. If you're enjoying the story, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part. My new life in the chic downtown apartment was everything I had dreamed of. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a spectacular view of the city, and the silence was a stark contrast to the old house's creaks and groans. I bought new furniture, designer clothes, and started frequenting high-end restaurants. Yet, the luxury felt empty. I had nobody to share it with. My phone remained silent, I had distanced myself from old friends, and I had no real connection to the new people I met. The loneliness was a quiet, constant hum beneath the surface of my curated life. One Tuesday, I was looking at a painting for my living room when my phone rang. It was Michael. I hesitated, then answered, my voice a little too cheerful. "Hey, how are you?" I asked. "I'm good, Sarah. I'm doing great, actually," he said. His tone was so calm it sent a shiver down my spine. "I just got off the phone with Grandma's lawyer. He was very helpful. He confirmed that Grandma did have a will." The air felt thin, a vice around my chest. "What are you talking about, Michael? We searched everywhere," I began, my voice faltering. "I found it, Sarah. A copy, at least. He told me it was signed and notarized and that you were the one who had it. Funny, I don't remember you ever mentioning that." His voice was laced with a chilling, cold fury. My perfectly manicured world began to crack. The confrontation came a week later, not with a phone call, but with a hard knock on my apartment door. I opened it to find Michael, standing there not with the hurt, grieving eyes I was used to, but with a stone-cold fury I had never seen. He stepped inside without being invited. The sterile, minimalist decor of my new home seemed to shrink in his presence. He held a manila envelope, and the sight of it was enough to make my stomach turn. "This is a certified copy of Grandma's will," he said, his voice low and steady. "And this is a statement from her lawyer confirming that you were present when it was drafted. You lied to me, Sarah. You took everything." I started to defend myself, the lies pouring out automatically. "It wasn't fair, Michael. You were never there for her. You didn't do what I did," I shouted, the desperation rising in my throat. He looked at me with an expression of profound disappointment, a look that cut deeper than any anger. "That's not your decision to make," he said, shaking his head slowly. "Grandma loved us both. She wanted us to share everything. You didn't just steal from me, Sarah. You stole from her memory. You broke her final wish." Then, with a finality that hit me like a physical blow, he said, "I'm not asking for the money anymore. I'm going to sue you. I'm going to make sure you face the consequences for what you did. And don't bother calling. You and I were done." He dropped the envelope on the glass coffee table and walked out, leaving me alone in my silent, expensive prison. The legal battle was an abyss. The money that was supposed to be my liberation became a millstone around my neck, draining away with every lawyer's bill. My attorney, a slick man in an expensive suit, was brutally honest. "Your position is weak, Sarah. You concealed a legal document. That's a clear case of fraud and breach of fiduciary duty." I tried to argue, to justify my actions, but his face remained impassive. He was a professional, not a confidant. The stress was a physical presence, a constant weight on my shoulders. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I started losing weight, the expensive clothes I had bought hanging loosely on my frame. My friends, hearing whispers about the lawsuit, began to distance themselves. Invitations stopped coming. When I tried to reach out, I was met with awkward silences and polite excuses. The gilded cage of my new life was now just a cage. I was utterly, profoundly alone. I would sit on the couch, staring at the cityscape, the lights mocking me. I had everything I had ever wanted on paper, and yet I had lost everything that ever truly mattered. The money wasn't making me happy. It was just a reminder of the family I had destroyed for it. That's the end of the 7th chapter. If you're enjoying the story, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part. The financial consequences hit hard and fast. The legal fees were astronomical, and before I knew it, my once substantial bank account was dwindling to nothing. I had to sell the expensive furniture, the designer clothes, and eventually, I had to put my beautiful, empty apartment on the market. The humiliation was a constant, burning sensation. I remember one day, as I was packing boxes, I found an old, faded letter from Grandma tucked inside a book. It wasn't about money or possessions. It was a simple note. Just a few lines telling me how much she cherished our Sunday lunches together. How happy she was that our family was so close. The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. I had traded her final wish, for us to be together, for a pile of money and a life of solitude. I picked up my phone, my hands shaking, and scrolled to Michael's contact. I had to tell him how sorry I was, to beg for forgiveness, for a chance to fix things. I typed out a long, rambling message, pouring my heart out. Then I pressed send. An hour later, I got a notification. The message had failed to deliver. Michael had blocked my number. The last bridge between us was gone. The final court hearing was a blur of legal jargon and crushing finality. The judge, an elderly woman with a stern face, looked at me with an expression that was neither angry nor sympathetic, but simply tired. She saw this kind of thing all the time. She ruled against me, of course. My actions were a clear violation of trust and law. I was ordered to pay Michael a significant sum, a sum that, combined with my mounting legal debt, left me with almost nothing. The money I had so greedily chased was now gone, a phantom memory of a life I had briefly stolen. I sat in the courtroom as the verdict was read, the world spinning around me. I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was my lawyer, already talking about filing for bankruptcy. As I walked out of the courtroom, I saw Michael. He was standing with a friend, his face somber, but composed. Our eyes met for a brief moment. There was no rage in his expression, only a profound, heartbreaking sadness. It was the look of a person who had mourned the loss of a sister, not just a lawsuit. He turned and walked away, and I knew with a cold certainty that it was the last time I would ever see him. Life after the verdict was a brutal return to reality. My downtown apartment was sold, and I was forced to move into a small, cramped studio apartment in a much less desirable part of town. I had to find a job, any job, to start paying off my debts. I ended up working as a cashier at a local grocery store, my days a monotonous cycle of ringing up orders and staring blankly at strangers. The small, meaningless interactions with customers were the only human contact I had, a bitter substitute for the family I had destroyed. One afternoon, during a slow shift, I scrolled through my phone. I saw a news article on a local paper's website. The headline read, "Local man establishes foundation in grandmother's name to assist families with elderly care." It was Michael. The article described how he had used the money from his legal settlement to start a foundation, a beautiful tribute to our grandmother. The money I had stolen, the money I had fought him for, was now being used for good. It was the final, devastating consequence of my actions. I hadn't just lost money. I had lost my family, my integrity, and any chance at redemption. I sat in my small apartment that evening, surrounded by the silence, not with anger, but with a deep, bottomless emptiness. I had everything I had ever wanted for a fleeting moment, and now I had nothing. The true price of my greed wasn't the money I lost, but the person I had become, alone with the ghosts of my past. That's the end of the final chapter. If you enjoyed the story, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next video.